if there's anything in our culture that we've been deliberate about, it's that. It's about having the sincerity of purpose to offer the ability to someone to feel at home, to have that comfort, to have that dignity, to be respected, to be safe, and to do so in an environment where they can live their best life. Myself and my co-founder Farid Damji, we've known each other for probably 30 odd years. Our wives are childhood best friends. Through that engagement, we were forced to have lunches and coffees and dinners over the years, and we had actually intersected our careers while he was running Vancouver General Hospital, and I was doing work in the supply chain of the Vancouver Coastal Health. And we started to talk about our common values, if you will, around the fact that we were both immigrants raised in multi-generational families where the value of our grandmothers and grandparents were critical to our upbringing. In many ways, our grandparents raised us. And those conversations led us to think about how would we sustain the legacy of our immigrant grandparents in terms of our way of giving back and demonstrating gratitude to their efforts, from moving to a new country, to helping us settle, and to really sharing with us the values of living one's life through the ethos of ethics. And that whole discussion led us on the back of a napkin to come up with our credo that one day we would want to be in business together to advance the cause of seniors living. And through that, we would be deeply rooted in this foundational credo of let us welcome you home. Because that concept, that North Star, would be fundamental for us to make sure that anybody that lives with us would be able to share in the value set so aptly where we were raised with by our grandparents, to make sure that that standard of life, that quality of living, can also be achieved by many others who come live with us. And so it started really as literally writing this down on the back of a napkin, coming up with our credo, and then some years later, acquiring our first two assets. We've seen a tremendous amount of change over the last 13 years, where I think when we got into the space, the primary focus was a bed, a place to sleep, and a place to be fed. Nobody really looked deeply into this notion of building community, this let us welcome you home principle, where, what does wellness look like and feel like? How does one think about mental health? How does one think about physical health? And recognizing that each person comes with their own perspective. And in that whole background being, how do you provide safety and security in a way that not just the resident, but their family members can feel that sense of security, whether they're near or far. And so I think there's been a lot of evolution in the last 13 years as it relates to what does it mean to live in a senior's residence. And, we've all seen more recently in the news, a lot of misuse of terminology in terms of this concept of nursing home, where there's a very uni-focused measure of what it's like to live in residences. And I just don't think that that's accurately reflected in the marketplace. And a lot of it is because of ignorance, quite frankly, of those that are writing about it, because there's been tremendous innovation and progress in the space over the last number of years. As we think about culture, what does the gift of failure look like? Because we're not going to get it right every single time. And we know what our credo is, let us welcome you home. We know that if you take care of the senior, the rest will take care of itself. But we also know that in that process, we make mistakes. And so for us, culturally, it was always, and it always has been, about owning up to that and making sure that we're always sincere in our purpose. And look, this is about the human experience. If there's anything in our culture that we've been deliberate about, it's that. It's about having the sincerity of purpose to offer the ability to someone to feel at home, to have that comfort, to have that dignity, to be respected, to be safe, and to do so in an environment where they can live their best life. As we have built our organization, we've recognized the need and importance to seek wisdom, knowledge, expertise, and whether that's through community partnerships with the likes of the Alberta Continuing Care Association in Alberta, or with the BC Seniors Living Association in BC, or through knowledge partnerships with the University of Alberta, as we've done in Edmonton, or the University of Manitoba, where how do we bring new knowledge, new research to the forefront? And that can manifest its ways in many ways. Number one, it's about leveraging senior educators to come and deliver their knowledge, their know-how to our residents and employees so that they can learn to live their best life, whether it's around mental health, whether it's around suffering with incontinence, whether it's about healthy aging, and how do we deliver on that expertise? It could be about new technologies and research that are coming in the background. We've spent a lot of time thinking about brain health and how brain health can find ways to stay strong in later years. And in our partnerships with universities, we're using state-of-the-art new technologies to ensure that as we're delivering services, that those services are foundationally rooted with the support of leading edge researchers so that we can take advantage of their knowledge upfront in helping residents live their best life. The third thing in my mind is about technologies more broadly. And so whether it's using a touchless security system that allows us to track through GPS whereabouts of our residents, whether it's about ensuring that if they have a fall, we know exactly where they are and we're able to go and serve them right away, touchless entries on doors and entryways into their homes so that the spread of disease can be mitigated through that process. These are the types of things that we think about every day around how do we deliver the next level of services to our residents that allows them to be in a safer, healthier environment. We were spending a lot of money on these technologies, but our vision was way ahead of what these technologies were being able to offer. And so we were failing miserably every single time because they just wouldn't work. And we had to really try over many years to finally get to the point where we are now, where the tech finally has caught up. And it's almost like you think about what Apple's done over the last 30, 40 years. They're not just a company that happened to hit success yesterday. They had to fail a number of times in that process. And I think the same characterization would be applicable to a lot of the things that we've tried. 11 years ago, when we started a new development, we said, we nailed it. We got this technology, or our vision of touchless entry, GPS tracking, and fall prevention. We found the integrators, we closed the transaction. COVID happened. And we thought, boy, either we could be foretellers, or we've just found something that really all of a sudden now is no longer just safety precaution, but now we have an infection prevention strategy that's going to be met through this technology investment. And I think for us, that was the big aha moment where technology meets innovation, meets the fundamentals of safety, security of the resident, with this layer of how do you safely live in a pandemic environment. And this technology that we've now introducing into our latest development, Astor Gardens in Sherwood Park, which we're working hand in hand with you folks at Comfort Life to get the word out on. is going to be that best in class offering where we can actually offer the latest in technology, but without compromising safety and security. And in fact, taking the requirements that the health authorities have had and the governments have had around infection control and prevention and safety, and building all of that into this one technology. And so, with this one investment, we've solved so many issues that, from a resident perspective and from an employee perspective, we can now all of a sudden, by a measure of a quantum, protect everyone through this investment. From the perspective of what I mentioned earlier as it relates to safety and security, everything is touchless. So they don't need a physical key to get in anywhere. When they move in, they get a band. That band allows them to move into common area doors, into their suite doors. The other thing that is going to be exciting for them is that they could be sitting on the fourth floor having a beer, watching a hockey game, and it's time to clear the tab. They don't have to do anything because everything's being tracked on their fob. So they don't have to sign a piece of paper. They don't have to do any of that. They click it through the QR code technology. Everything is being tracked for them. They decide they want to go have a swim. Again, we know exactly where they are. One of our wellness coordinators will join them for that swim, make sure that they're safe and secure while they're entertaining them. While they're having chair yoga, we know exactly where they are in that moment. And we know that if there are issues with their health during that chair yoga, that we can track and monitor their well-being. We also have a state-of-the-art memory care neighborhoods that we are offering at Astor Gardens. And that's what I think is first of its kind in Alberta. And in the sense that, as I mentioned to you earlier, we value knowledge partnerships. And so Optima's proprietary brain health model was developed in concert with the University of Alberta and the University of Manitoba. And so we're taking both a very clinical approach and a very knowledge-based approach to the way in which we deliver our memory care services to our residents. And the reason why they live in neighborhoods is because they're not done living their best life. We're going to provide tools and interesting ways in which they're going to be able to leverage the parts of their brain that they can use effectively, make sure they have physical engagement, and really ensure that when they and their families are together, they really are able to live that life that their loved ones want them to lead. And as part of that engagement, the partnership we have with the University of Manitoba is that they've introduced a number of new technologies, which we're going to be piloting at Astor Gardens. And that includes a brand new app called Mind Triggers. This app that's been developed with the University of Alberta, Manitoba, is going to enable us to work with residents and their families to help to look at how do you stimulate parts of the brain that today may not receive as much stimulation. And so through that, we are going to be able to study and understand how we can motivate parts of that brain to get reactivated, and to make sure that if there's ways to slow down aging of that brain health, then we want to be at the forefront of that and give every opportunity to residents and their families to ensure their loved ones are being well looked after. We're fortunate that these partnerships are great ways for us as industry and knowledge leaders as universities to come together and marry thought process with action. And I say that because the concept of living your best life isn't just about clinical outcomes. It's about social, mental outcomes. And so at the end of the day, we're all people. And as individuals, as human beings, we need a lot more nurturing than just a clinical focus to be able to study the brain to say, if you do this, then this will happen. Certainly you need that clinical focus, but I think us as operators are able to bring to knowledge leaders the perspective around the human element of healthy aging. We're not just a place where we incubate technologies. We're a place where we work with our knowledge leaders to look at how do technologies work hand in hand with human behavior, because ultimately it's our perspective as human beings that enable certain technologies to work effectively or not. And so, we try really hard to marry humanity and human behaviors with technology when we think about implementing something at any one of our residences. That process has created a tremendous amount of scrutiny in our space. And I think, with tragedy and with this type of scrutiny, the only thing that's going to happen is that the sector will have to continue to evolve and improve over the next 10 years. Because if you look at the demographic shift and profile of seniors today, we're about to see the most number of seniors ever in the history of this country. And so the good news for those individuals who are now going to be hitting those years where they will want to think about where do they want to live, how do they want to live, which operator they want to be supported by. The good news is there's going to be tremendous investment by the public sector and by the private sector to take some of the approaches that we've had as an operator over the last number of years, but to amplify that significantly, where I think the perspective is going to be that seniors housing, seniors living communities are going to be tremendously attractive 2 to 3 years from now because of all of the innovation and investment that's going to be coming into the sector. And we will continue to invest in the space significantly. We will double down on the knowledge partnerships we've developed. We will work closely with government to make sure that investments are being made in the sector and in the space, and we will drive innovation, quality of care, quality outcomes in terms of providing independence to residents who want to live that life to their fullest in a way that's meaningful for everyone. And so I think there's tremendous, as they say, in crisis breeds opportunity. And I think both from operators and from residents, there's going to be tremendous opportunity where residents will demand a certain standard, as they should. Their families will demand that standard, and us as operators are going to be called to the test to over deliver on the promises that we make as leading operators in the space.